The influences of war, drugs, and politics would result in, quote, relevant movies like Easy Rider or Wild in the Streets, in which America's teens imprisoned everyone over the age of 30. By the mid-70s, the majors had taken over production of these films, causing most of the independent companies to disband, leaving thousands of beach bunnies, Gila monsters, and saucer men homeless. The new movies were being created by committees, and they all seemed patterned after Animal House. Once again, it's time for a change. Every few years, there's a new trend that lays waste to all previous efforts. If there's any consolation to the rash of idiotic films being produced now, it's that, in a few years, movies like Porky's and Police Academy will be just as embarrassing to today's generation as It's a Bikini World is to mine.
The place really swings, doesn't it?
Certainly does.
I'm Bob Shaw, and that is segment 2 for tonight.
Next on segment 2, Bob Shaw looks at a movie that is 46 years old, yet videocassette buyers are still poised to spend another $20 million to see Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind was the box office giant of its time, and for 46 years it has retained its popularity to an astonishing degree. Well, now in 1985, the videocassette release of Gone with the Wind guarantees the continuation of the legend. Tonight on segment 2, Bob Shaw looks at why film buffs may spend an estimated $20 million adding an old friend to their collection. Here's the story.
These people are waiting to spend $90 for a videotape of a 46-year-old movie that has been playing on television for almost a decade. It may seem strange, but then Gone with the Wind has been creating an uproar since years before the first frame was even shot. Margaret Mitchell, an Atlanta housewife, started writing Gone with the Wind in 1926 to kill time while recuperating from a broken ankle. It was completed 9 years later, and to her surprise, it was published. The book was 1,037 pages long, weighed 2.5 pounds, and sold for a record price of $3. It became the best-selling book of all time. Before long, movie studios were fighting to obtain the film rights. The Selznick Studios won, with a bid of $50,000. Readers let it be known that the only acceptable choice for Rhett Butler would be Clark Gable, so Selznick traded distribution rights and 50% of the profits to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer to obtain him. The search for Scarlett O'Hara created the biggest media blitz in Hollywood history. After months of screen tests, the role was awarded to Vivien Leigh, who promised to cool her extramarital romance with Laurence Olivier for the duration. After a year of power plays, bruised egos, and daily gossip coverage, Gone with the Wind was completed at the huge cost of $4.25 million. It premiered in Atlanta in December of 1939, when the prevailing ticket price was 22 cents. Within 6 months, the movie had brought in over $20 million, 4 times the gross of any picture in history. It won 10 Academy Awards and was widely recognized as the greatest movie ever made. There was one complaint. The New York Times felt that watching a color film for 3 hours and 51 minutes could be damaging to the eyes. It was Hollywood's first true motion picture event, and its popularity has never diminished. In 1967, during its 4th reissue, the movie played in New York for 11 months, outgrossing MGM's biggest film that year, 2001: A Space Odyssey. To date, Gone with the Wind has brought in over $350 million worldwide. In 1976, NBC paid $5 million for the first television showing. That broadcast resulted in what still remains the highest-rated movie ever shown on television. CBS later paid $35 million for exclusive North American rights until 1989. That meant no pay TV, no theatrical reissues, and no videocassettes. But that wasn't going to stop die-hard video fans. Since the film was released overseas a couple of years ago, Japanese videocassettes and discs have been showing up in stores over here. Of course, there is one problem with these imports.
Oh, Ashley, I love you. I've always loved you. I've never loved anyone else. I only married Charles just to hurt you.
But fans were so hungry to own a copy of their favorite film, they bought the cassettes, in numbers large enough to convince MGM it was useless to wait another 4 years for domestic release. They renegotiated with CBS and announced the discovery of a newly found internegative, which, they said, would make the home videotape the highest quality version of Gone with the Wind available since its first release. But is it worth almost $100?
I would have paid $1,000 for it. It's my very most favorite movie ever.
How many times have you seen it?
I can't really tell anymore. I've read the book 5 times, and I've taped it on audio tape, but this is my first time with video.
I've seen it so many times, I just wanted to own it.
When I
get my tape home. It'll be my 102nd time.
Oh, really?
Since 1943 when I saw it on my 15th birthday for the first time.
How often do you think you're going to be watching it now that you can have it at home?
Oh, probably at least once, twice a month. I never get tired of it.
I'd trade all my other tapes for this. I really would.
So now you can have your own copy of Gone with the Wind, which is a happy occasion for these people, but it hits me as a rather sad one, too. It is, in effect, the final chapter in the long history of this epic movie, and now that anyone can own it and run it anytime they like, it's not that special anymore. Gone with the Wind used to be an event. Now it's just a possession. I'm Bob Shaw for segment 2.
That's
Barbara,
amazing.
I saw that movie in 1961. They had released it for the Civil War centennial.
Yes.
And I've never seen it since, but seeing those scenes again, it's still a very vivid movie for
It's
me.
wonderful, but I still think, despite the fact that you can watch it on your television set, I want to see it on the big screen.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if Mr. Selznick thought he made a good deal. 50% of the
Can you
distribution rights. That's segment 2 for tonight. We'll be back with more news right after this.
George?
Are you ready to go to the movies?
You betcha.
Okay, here we go. Coming up tonight on segment 2, Bob Shaw takes a look at sex, or the lack of it, in movies from the 50s.
Tantalizing, but to caress me is to play with death.
One of the ongoing complaints about contemporary movies is there's too much sex. Well, there may be more explicit sexual material presented these days, but sexuality, or the promise of it, has existed throughout the history of film. In fact, as Bob Shaw tells us, never were movies seemingly more preoccupied with sex than during the so-called innocent 50s.
It was the time of the sex kitten, bombshells who became stars for reasons beyond acting ability. The major studios started the trend early in the decade with Jane Mansfield, Marilyn Monroe, and Jane Russell. But around 1956, something happened which caused an avalanche of movies starring voluptuous sex pots. Independent film companies discovered the perfect patrons, with indiscriminating tastes and money to burn: teenage males.
Hey, you know what we need here, huh? We need some broads.
To them, it didn't matter who was in a film or how much it cost to make, as long as it contained action, anarchy, and sex. Mostly sex. The best and cheapest way to lure them in was to cast some unknown but well-built woman as the star. Of course, there was no sexual activity whatsoever, but that didn't stop filmmakers from promising what they couldn't deliver.
He needed her kiss to satisfy his desire. 2 men and a lovely girl